Good afternoon, and welcome to this live stream of the European Training Foundation. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. During this conversation today, we are going to speak about the role of green skills in the reforms of education and labor market policies in the EU neighboring countries. And let me introduce our guest for this discussion, Markus Janzer, Institute for Labor Market and Vocational Research from Germany. Hi, Markus.
Hello, everybody. Delighted to be here.
Thanks for being with us today. And Roman Boita from the European Training Foundation. Hi, Roman.
Hi, everyone.
Before we get started, I'd like to invite all of our followers and all people watching us live to let us know where you're watching us from. So we would really like to know the geography of this live stream. And also send us your questions and your comments in the chat. I see already that we have some people joining. I will take your highs and hellos a bit later. But today's conversation is going to be about myths about green skills. We all have some ideas about what the green skills are, but are they actually true and valid? Some of these might be our misconceptions and our biases. Some of them might be true. And today, together with you, our dear followers, we will try to bust some of those myths about green skills. Please let us know whether you agree about those misconceptions, whether you have them as well, and whether you suffer from them or you enjoy them. And post your questions and your comments about them in the chat. So the myth number one, green skills are only for people who work in the environmental sector. Marcos, true or false, and why?
False. I think in many sectors, not only in the environmental sector, it's needed or necessary to have environmental tasks or environmental protection going on. For example, here in Germany, I'm a researcher in the German IAB, and here we can see there are about 6.6 million people that have an occupation which has at least some green skills included, not an entire green job, but at least some green skills. And so we have here about 6.6 million employees, whereas the environmental sector in Germany is supposed to have about 3 million people. So you see, not every employee that has green skills is located in the environmental sector. So I would say green skills is a broader concept.
So it's not only for the new sector, renewable energy, because that's what you think first when you speak about green, but it's actually for the old professions, existing and old-fashioned professions that also have to acquire those green skills in order to contribute to the greener society, right, Marcos?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Myth number two, and that one will go to Roman actually, to bust or to confirm. Green skills are only accessible for developed and economically wealthy countries. Roman, true or false, and why?
I'm going to say true for now, hopefully false very soon. So let's start with some data points. So the cumulative share of green profiles has grown 40% from 2015 to 2021 in high-income countries, and it was only 37% in middle-income countries, 31% in lower middle-income countries, and 18% in low-income countries. So for now, yes, it seems that richer countries deploy more green skills as they make it easier to access. Having said that, all countries rely on a thriving economy to sustain their social development, and this requires shifting to a green circular economy for multiple reasons. First, countries have signed up to the Paris Accord and must achieve carbon neutrality in the next 2 decades. But most importantly, countries that do not invest in greening their economies will quickly find it difficult to remain competitive on the global value chain. And particularly when their economic activities pollute profusely and consumers, whether they're local or outside the country, decide to go for cleaner alternatives. So whether you produce food, energy, design mobility, and urban infrastructure, the need to consider and limit environmental impact will determine your ability to export to other countries that have established carbon emissions regulations. The EU neighborhood region is a case in point, as most of these countries export to the EU, which will soon implement a carbon border adjustment mechanism. All economies, irrespective of their current strength, must green up their act in order to grow and support the communities in which they operate.
Thanks a lot, Roman. So, would it be correct to say, like in general, when we speak about tackling the consequences of the climate change, that the cost of inaction is going to be actually higher than the cost of doing something? Correct, Roman?
Oh, absolutely. That's a very true statement. In fact, you could even say that. I mean, you look at the population displacement across the world today. The bulk of it is due to climate changes. People moving out of areas where it's no longer possible to farm, areas that are getting flooded, areas that are deforested. Climate change is already impacting labor across the globe, and in the future it will only increase. For example, temperatures will make it almost impossible to work outside. Talk to farmers or people who work in constructions or in the timber industry. The change is already there.
Thanks a lot, Roman. Thank you. Now I'd like to take some of the highs and hellos that we're receiving from you, dear followers. We have Neboisha says, hello, everyone. Hi, thanks for joining us today. We have Christina from Cyprus, Gabriela from Romania. Hi, Gabriela. Sabrina from Brussels, and Nurida from Azerbaijan. So, dear followers, we're tackling some of the most common misconceptions about green skills. But if you believe that you have one, actually, please write it in the chat and we'll take it and we'll try to test our experts and ask their opinion about it. Myth number 3. We already tackled it somehow. The green skills are only relevant for the new jobs, new occupations. So the typical solar panel installer, not to the existing one. Marcus.
Yeah, I think this is a very popular misconception. So in fact, it's the other way around. So most of the occupations with green skills are those that are much longer in the labor market. I can report from the German labor market because I do some research about the so-called greening of jobs, so the change of the job contents over time. And here we can see, for example, that in 2012 in Germany, we had out of 4,000 single occupations overall, we had about 1,650 occupations now to 2020, and it was 1,400 in 2012. Yeah, so it's about 200 new entrants of occupations in this league of green occupations or occupations with green skills. And of these 200 occupations, we had only about a handful of really new occupations that entered the labor market, but most of them was just became or received some new skills. For example, due to new curricula at the vocational training, because this also contributes to this occupational descriptions that we work with. And yeah, so we can see it's the other way around. Normally, it's the ecological transformation takes place mainly in the existing occupations and to a little share with new occupations.
So could you give us maybe an example of a traditional occupation that will be strongly updated now with the green skills, because otherwise we cannot make sure that green transition actually happens. Marcos,
Yeah.
can you give us an example?
So I think at an international level, this might be happen in different occupations. So, but there are many crafts occupations, which might be mentioned, even like so old school occupations like the chimney sweep, which nowadays has a lot of green skills in the job description, because there it's is energy consultancy. It's just emission control, and they have to know a lot about energy efficiency and much more. And so this is one example, and there are many, especially what as you mentioned, the people that apply the solar panels on the rooftops. So there are different occupations in Germany that nowadays have this as a skill in their description. So it's like an enlargement of their skill set.
Thanks a lot, Marcus. Thank you. Now, just to remind to our followers that we're busting the myths about green skills, and we're going one by one. And if you have one actually that you encountered, please write it in the chat, and we'll be able to either confirm it or bust it. Next one: green skills are too expensive to learn and implement. True or false, Roman?
I'm going to go for false. And the first part of my answer would be that there's no plan B. You could also say there's no plan B, and we must collectively shift to green economies or we'll lose decades worth of socio-economic development. But we can add that apart from a few exceptions, all countries have signed up to the Paris Accord, which requires, as I said before, to move to net zero emissions by 2050, which in turn requires the decarbonization of all economic sectors, and this can only happen with the right skills. So from a country perspective, developing green skills and deploying green skills throughout the economic sectors is a building block of their net zero ambitions. And so, of course, education has a cost. We all know that very well, but it's also the best investment any country can make to ensure that its human capital is geared to work in a green economy. Now, from a business perspective, or even SME perspective, which mostly populate the neighborhood region of the EU, well, their goal is to remain competitive by providing services that consumers are willing to pay. And increasingly, consumers seek services and products from greener businesses, like whether produces were produced organically, or whether an online platform is hosted by clean energy-powered servers, or even when businesses consider the social impact on their community in which they operate, and even what they do about vulnerable groups. So, and even from a learner's or a professional's perspective, the same is true. Concretely, it would depend exactly which training you exactly refer to, but I do not have any indication that green skills acquisition is more expensive than any other educational subjects. In fact, in many cases, at least the technical green skills are learned through apprenticeship or work-based learning, and often you get an incentive to do that. So that may even be a little bit cheaper.
Thanks a lot, Roman. Thanks for busting this one. I just would like to take one hello from Piret Liv from Denmark. Hi, and thanks for joining us today. And another one from Agron from Tirana, Albania. And then there is actually a very good question coming from a user with the name Semois. And the user is saying, could you please take time to define what exactly are green skills, and then talk about what concretely are the new types of green skills jobs? Roman, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I'll give it a try, but Marcus, do jump in at any point, please.
Okay, I will.
We need to break it down into three ingredients. One would be knowledge, technical expertise, and transversal skills. So the knowledge would be, for example, climate literacy. Do you understand fully what climate change actually means? Do you understand sustainability? Do you have the nature-centric values? Do you perceive the importance of nature? Do you have the values for fairness? Do you believe in equality? and so on and so forth. And these are like the knowledge and values and the competences that make you ready to take on to have a green mindset, basically. And these are competences that you build throughout your life, starting from preschool all the way into your professional career, even for older people. And then you have the transversal skills, so the ones that you will require that are not specifically green, but that will help you get green jobs. And these are mostly linked to ICT. You need to have a good digital foundation, because most of the green jobs include a large component of digital practice. But you also need to know about STEM skills, the science, technology, engineering, and math, because a lot of the green jobs require that you understand these things. For example, we'll just pick a quick example. If you're going to go into precision irrigation, which is a very growing green skills demand on the markets. If you're going to learn that, well, you should know about math and liquid physics so that you can design the system. And then finally, you would need to know the technical green skills. So your ability to utilize, maintain, repair green technology. And then we're talking, of course, about heat pumps, photovoltaic systems, and any technology that will reduce the carbon print or environmental impact of whatever economic activity you have. So, I mean, there's different frameworks to discuss green skills, but this is the one that we have been using at ETF for the sake of its simplicity. So you divide it into three parts: the values, the knowledge, the transversal skills, so the STEM, the ICT, and the actual technical green skills.
Thanks a lot, Roman. And just to let you say more, some background info, actually, there is a big discussion in expertise communities, how do we call them? And I think that the standard name is actually skills needed for the green transition, but just for the simplicity of social media and to simplify the term, we call them green skills during this conversation. Now, we actually have received quite some other questions that I would like to ask to our experts. Question from Mahmoud. What are the current challenges that face green transition, especially in global south? Roman, maybe also you could say something about it.
Well, there's many. Not sure where to start with, but if we refer to strictly skills for green jobs, or the skills that are necessary for the green transition, which are not all green, then some of the main obstacles are political awareness, the realization of the urgency of deploying these skills. And often it's also linked to the lack of funding and resources to adapt the educational system to this new reality of a green economy.
Thanks a lot. Then actually there is a question or comment from LinkedIn user saying that why should we tag these skills with this new title, green skills? What is the consequences or benefits? I think Roman already tackled this issue, just for the simplicity of identifying those skills that are needed, that people need to make green transition happen. And then a question from Agron from Albania. How do you see the green skills in versus CG? I guess it's career guidance. Agron, but please let us know if this is not the case, because if you can, maybe specify your question and then we'll take it again. And then again from Agron is, municipalities are facing with low level of budget towards green skills. What do you see as solutions? Marcus, maybe you can give a couple of hints from what is happening in Germany, actually, in terms of financing green skills.
And did I understood it correctly? It's based or on the municipality level?
Yes.
Question?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think in fact, so there are big differences on the regional level, also in Germany. I think you can see this also in Europe and other parts of the world. That of course the regions have different amenities, different knowledge structure. So every policy that wants to foster the green transition of a region has to consider the the situation that is there in the concrete region. I think the main issue that we have here in Germany is that the, the the differences between regions are so high that there is no one size fits all solution. So it takes, and we have, for example, we have more than 400 counties in Germany, and so every head of a regional um, administration has to find his or her own strategy for fostering green skills in his or her county. Yeah, and so I think the very different regional challenges, I think, is one of the main issues in Germany. And I think the funding abilities are another one, because it's so the municipalities or the regions have very different financial capabilities. So to finance new innovations, for example. And so there is yeah, I think these are the most two
Mhm.
challenges.
Mhm. Thanks a lot, Marcus. Also, coming back to the point regarding green skills, central government or local government, I just would like to share with you something that when we launched the ETF Green Skills Award competition in 2021, and this year it's actually we're having already a third edition of it, we realized that at local level, I think that the grass initiatives, the grassroots initiatives are super strong, even with not a lot of funding, but people on the places, on the local communities, they do much more than bigger initiatives from central level. That's at least my impression. Roman, would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. And I also see that there's a comment, a
Yes.
follow-up comment from C'est moi, explaining that I believe that the dependence on more technology for having green skill job is contradictory to climate transition goals. Low tech is the way forward, not more tech. Thoughts? On that, I think it's a very good question. This continues to be a very relevant debate. However, for those of us who are reading the news and certainly have browsed through the latest IPCC reports, um, uh, the latest version of that report explains or stipulates that we are now basically almost guaranteed not to be within 1.5 degrees of warming up before mid-century. And this requires, and if we are to stick to the 1.5 degrees, we must radically reduce carbon emissions in the next decade. And the only way to do that is to use all the technology that is available to us. Is certainly not the only thing that is necessary for a green transition, where we consider the ecological impact of all economic activities, but certainly for energy production and the reduction of energy waste, technology is the main part of the answer. So these are my thoughts on that question.
Thanks a lot, Roman, for taking it. I didn't have even to refer to it. Thanks, Semoa, for your comment. Now, we have just received hi from Tamuna. She says hello from Mashav, Georgia. Hi, Tamuna, and welcome to this Busting the Myth exercise. I think we don't have any more questions, but send your comments and your questions if you have some, and send us your misconceptions about green skills that you might have. The next one is green skills are only relevant for high skilled workers, for instance, engineers. Marcos, is it true?
No, I think it's false. So in terms of the skills levels, so the highest share of workers with skills in the group of in the green skills groups are the so-called skilled workers. So workers that have kind of training or experience, like here in Germany, like the vocational training, but not a university degree. And so this is in general, in the German labor market, this is the largest share of about 70% of the labor force. And we see that in the employees that have green skills, it's pretty much the same. Even in the dark green group, so which is a
What
group.
do you mean by dark green, Matthias?
Yeah, so this are these occupations, or we categorize them just to be better able to do some comparisons. And so
Mhm.
these are the ones that have a high share of green skills, and they have a share of about 87% of this labor force group is in the skilled worker level. And yeah, so I think this is a myth that this is just for high skilled workers, and the other groups. So it's like on the helper level or low skilled level, and then the specialist level and the expert level. They have also green. There are occupations that have
Mhm.
these qualification levels for green skills. So you can, if you want to work in a job with green skills, then you will find one in every qualification level that you are. And the same um, seems to be in the future, because colleagues of mine for our macroeconomic department, they did a forecast for 2025 and 2030 due to some current climate policy goals and sustainable housing goals in Germany.
Mhm.
And they find that there will be a net growth of about 400,000 new jobs until 2025. And if you see which qualification level will these new jobs are, um, you can see that more than half of them are medium skilled jobs. And
We're speaking about vocational education training, right?
yeah, yeah, okay, okay, okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
But these are no, these are full jobs, so
Mhm.
not on the training level. It's just then on the normal employment level.
Mhm.
and and so there will be about 200,000 new job opportunities in the medium scale level, and about, yeah, and for the other three groups, it's more or less in a similar level. So every qualification level will benefit from these climate policies, but
Mhm.
the skilled workers will benefit most.
Okay, so this is definitely a false thing that only the engineers will need to acquire green skills. Now, I would like to take a couple of comments that we received from Muhammad. The term green skills sounds great. Gaining those skills that can be used in any sort of development in an environment friendly way or such technology. However, these are somewhat expensive. At the very beginning of this live stream, and we actually discussed that, and we learned from Roman that no, they're not more expensive than any others. And the key here is that educational provider, a school, would have to cooperate closely with private sector to organize apprenticeship, traineeship, and that's the recipe really to reduce the cost of acquiring those, and they're not expensive by default. The next one is saying political awareness. Green skills must be supported by the municipalities. I think it's more kind of a call for action rather than a question, but still, I wanted to read this one aloud. Agron says green skills stand more for urban areas or rural green areas? Raman.
Um, Tough one. I'm gonna say both. Um, there's no area where green skills are less required. They are required everywhere, literally. Now, naturally, in the rural areas, they may be more visible because that's where we produce our food, that's where we cut our timber, that's where we do our fishing, and people who are directly involved with nature need to develop these skills possibly quicker
Mhm.
than in urban areas. But they're also the people who are most aware of it because they are directly exposed to it. So from that perspective, I'm going to say in the rural areas is where it may be growing quicker, but it's certainly not. It's certainly just as needed in urban areas also. So
Mhm.
there's no urban rural divide as such. I don't see that.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Roman. And then there is a hi from Aspasi who just joined us. Thanks for being with us today. And hello from South Africa from Wiseman Jack. Hi, great to have you with us today. Now, there is a next question from Semois. I think we are already engaging in a nice conversation with him or her. Are there funding opportunities for individuals who wish to acquire green skills for future jobs? What about for organizations, businesses, schools who wish to improve their offerings to train others? Roman, do you want to take that one?
Okay, very briefly, because that's an incredibly broad question. We would need to understand better where you are. You need to understand the context of your local labor markets. Now, in terms of organizations or businesses or school who are collaborating and finding ways to develop these skills, I would refer you to the Climate Education for Climate Network, which is an EU network that does exactly that. It gathers all actors involved in this field and try to help them disseminate information, disseminate calls, communicate on the subject. So I would certainly recommend that you give that a quick search, or we can include the link later, and that will offer you a wealth of information on this subject.
Thanks, Letterman. Thank you. There is one question from Tamuna, and then I will jump to the very last myth that we have prepared for today. Tamuna is saying, are you interested in experiencing green skills in vocational education? Can you share it with us? So the experience of applying green skills, I think here we can actually ask Marcus, because Germany is really doing an amazing job in incorporating green skills into vocational education. So what is your experience, Marcus?
Okay, so if I understood correctly, so if not, maybe just add another comment. So I think in Germany we have this dual system of vocational training. So we have on the one hand side training within one establishment that is responsible for the entire training period, about more or less 3 years, depends on the occupation. And then you have this school system, so you have to visit regularly a specific school, and both together they also are responsible for the contents of the vocational curricula. And what is interesting is, okay, as we mentioned before, there are some occupations that have per se more green skills, but the newest and I think a very interesting development is that since 2021 there is a new common framework for all occupations in the vocational training system in Germany. And so this new framework has is doing some kind of mainstreaming. So there are 4 different topics like digitalization, data protection, law issues, and the fourth and very important one is sustainability. And so every occupation has to integrate in its curricula modules about sustainability, especially ecological sustainability. And so this is supposed to lead to a kind of green mainstreaming in the occupational sector in Germany. But it's, this is the plan, and it's, let's see if it works. But I think it's a very good step in the right direction.
Thanks a lot, Marcos. Also, in a side conversation, you mentioned that in Germany, what is happening now is that the schools, the providers of education that include green into their curriculum, they become much more popular. So actually, by doing so, we can actually work on popularity, on the reputation of vocational education and training. Is that right, Marcos?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mentioned in a pre-talk. So at the current projects, this is work in progress, but we are looking at the vocational training market, and we see here, starting from 2012 to 2022, that the establishments or the companies that offer vocational training in jobs with green skills, they have much less trouble to find the right or at all trainee than, for example, other um, occupations without any green or brown skills. And we have also brown skills in our sample. So these are occupations with combustion technologies and fossil fuel-based technologies, and they suffer most in finding appropriate trainees nowadays. So it seems that the green jobs even now benefit from the being green. And
So, for the current generation of graduates, in a way, green skills resolve two issues. First of all, the green skills included into curriculum raise the profile of vocational education training, but then they also make the jobs more attractive for young generation, which I think is a perfect recipe then to follow. Thanks a lot, Marcos. Now, I would like to go to the last myth in our list. And this one is very close to my heart, to tell you the truth. So, green skills are green jobs. Most green jobs are male jobs. So, in a way, the current inequalities, gender inequalities, will be even bigger when there will be more green jobs. Roman.
Yeah, regrettably, this one is not a myth. It's a fact. So gender inequalities are rooted in the different roles and identities given to individuals depending on whether they are male or female. And this patriarchal vision of the world is regrettably true in most of the world, including our labor markets, which reflect our cultural bias. So gender inequality are fostered and maintained by the same traditional structure that assign women and men to particular roles. And this in turn creates gender expectations. So if we discuss green jobs broadly, then yes, it's mostly men that benefit from it for now. In fact, the OECD recently released some data on green jobs, which they had disaggregated by gender. And it turns out that only 28% of green jobs globally are held by women. So now it's no surprise. This segregation is not new. It has affected our labor markets, well, forever, really. So I'll give the example of the ICT sector, the mobility sector, or the construction sector, where the women representation is even lower than for green jobs. Healthcare is the only sector where women are adequately represented, but even there, they are systematically paid less. And so to make things worse, women are also more likely than men to end up in jobs with low pay, low security, limited social mobility, and also they are often heavily represented in the informal economy, where their exposure to risk and exploitation is usually greatest. And we have seen that during the COVID pandemic. So clearly much more needs to be done on this front. And beyond the human rights approach, there's also a business case for women inclusion. This is because the growing demand for green skills is not being met sufficiently quickly. We have a green skills mismatch that is broadening, certainly in Europe, but also outside of the EU. And if women were fully integrated, we would almost double the number of profiles that recruiters can choose from. So the math speak louder than words. And this is at a time when, I said that before, we have 1 decade to change the course of humanity's trajectory. So we really need to take significant and actionable measures to make sure that women and girls are included in green skills and green skill courses enrollment. This is really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot, Roman. We will wrap in a second this conversation. I just would like to say hello to Blue Firm, who's joining from Indonesia, and thanks for being with us today. So what we discussed today in a nutshell, green skills could be a solution, could be a problem solver, but green are not inclusive and fair and just by default. We need to make them being inclusive and fair. Correct, Roman?
Yes, absolutely. In a sense, the green transition must happen, and it will happen. However, it will be inclusive only if we design it to be inclusive.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. We just received a hello from Kosovo, from Osman. Hi, Osman, and thanks for joining. Well, I think at this point, we busted quite some myths today about green skills. We also tackled some of the questions that you, our dear followers, you sent us. I would like to thank both of our speakers, Markus Janzer, Institute for Labor Market and Vocational Research from Germany. Thanks a lot, Markus, for being with us today.
Thank you.
And Roman Boitard from the European Training Foundation. Thanks a lot, Roman.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, and stay tuned because